Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good. All right, everybody. Everybody's back from lunch. Hopefully it was light. You won't be falling asleep on me in the next hour or so. So this is Death by PowerPoint. It is around 100 slides. I'm going to roll through it fairly quickly. I encourage you to stop me if you have any questions, anything you want me to ruminate on. We're going to go through Microflex Complete, the hardware review here. We're going to talk about all the different components. Then we're going to take a look at the DCS LAN calculator as well. There are some things I'm going to gloss over because I think this gets a little too deep at times. But if you do want to go down the rabbit hole, don't hesitate to ask, and we'll go over some things, okay? I believe everybody knows earlier it was mentioned I'm Ben Cook. I do market development up in Canada. One of the weird things about MXC and DIS, which is stunning, not per capita, I mean overall sales. DIS did better in Canada than the US. So what does that mean to me? It means this market is ripe for some sales. So don't be scared by this stuff. If we can work our way through it, you'll find it's not as confusing or scary as maybe it had been in the past. So let's work through it. So first thing to talk about is where did the name Microflex Complete come from? One of the core elements is the gooseneck microphone. And this is kind of critical to the system to remember that DIS did not use Shure microphones. MXC does. And that is one of the biggest changes, is that this now sounds like a Shure product, not a DIS, Danish Interpretation Systems product. And then Complete stands for the design of it's a fully self-contained system that gives you all of your individual sound reinforcement, your monitoring, and then remote control of the system. So it really is a complete audio system now. And the level of flexibility and scalability is all provided by Microflex Complete. So what is the kind of mission statement for this product? It's an integrated audio system for conferences and meetings, delivering natural, intelligible sound and adding structure that will make discussions and meetings more focused and productive. Microflex Complete replaces all of the conference unit and gooseneck branded, microphones of the DIS branded DCS 6000 conference system. We did have a discussion earlier. 5900 series is staying around. You don't need to worry about it going anywhere, but the DCS 6000 system is being discontinued very quickly. It is backwards compatible with the DCS 6000 system and all of its hardware. So if you do have an existing system where you want to add on some MXC products to an existing system, you can do that. Key use cases and target environments for Microflex Complete are managed structured meetings in government, corporate, and educational facilities, with participants taking roles like delegate, chairperson, secretary, interpreter, a technician, or an IT administrator, and they all have specific requirements. For multilingual meetings, where you're having translation, where simultaneous interpretation of multiple languages is needed, or meetings in large flexible spaces where the space may be rented for a conference or a temporary where you're going to have a temporary conference where the cabling is just going to be run for a few days, or the use of a wireless system is not practical. And then meeting spaces that require efficient cabling structure. One of the key advantages of the new MXC system is the redundant cabling that we're going to go over. And then we've got the buildings with restrictions for component installations, obviously historic buildings and things like that where we can't be running cables through walls. Target audience. For participants in structured meetings, they all take different roles. So I think everyone knows this stuff. You've got delegates. You've got your chairperson or your leader is the person who's running the meeting. You've got your interpreter who may be doing the meeting in another language. Something to keep in mind is if they're doing one level of translation, so English to French, that's just a single relay. There is a chance where someone who speaks Arabic doesn't speak the floor language, so they would listen to the French interpretation and then interpret that into Arabic. In an example like that, they call it a relay. And there's many examples. I don't think in the US you guys use the interpretation as often as some of our other countries. In Canada, it's mandatory that every meeting be in 2 languages. So interpretation is much more important, I think, in other parts of the world, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And then the system IT administrator, they might be the same as the IT person, or they might be separate. They might have a separate system IT administrator. So to fulfill the functional requirements of meeting participants with all those roles, MicroFlex Complete offers the following key features. It uses a single daisy chain topology to connect the conference units with the central unit via DCS LAN, which is a proprietary protocol for power, audio, and data signals. It offers a wide range of portable flush mount and modular conference units, allowing for conferences with up to 3,800 participants. And the system supports up to 31 translated languages provided by interpreters using dedicated systems like the ISO-conforming MXC model. All of the MXC conference units use the MicroFlex gooseneck microphones. They all have CommShield technology for resistance against RF noise and for mobile phones and other wireless devices. Participant identification is supported via the Shure NFC cards and the use of third-party card programmers. And the MXC sign is a dual-sided e-paper name sign, which can either be freestanding or flush-mounted to identify conference participants. Unified English Braille overlays or integrated Braille labels are available on all portable units to fulfill regulatory requirements for applications in certain countries. And MXC conference units allow a redundant loop cable topology to be used, which allows the system to continue operating in the event of a cable failure within that loop. This requires an accessory inline adapter to be inserted into the loop. That's that little box there. I've got a couple of them sitting at the back. It's the MXC ACC RIB. From now on, I will refer to it as the McRib. It is just it's a gender bender, in essence. It allows the pins to be reversed so that if there is a break in the line, the transmission will go backwards. So this system diagram shows the full scope of MXC connectivity and functionality. So in this example, 3 out of the 4 available DCS LAN ports on the CCU are used for connecting the conference units, the interpreter units, and the name signs. So you'll see the 3 chains there in kind of the yellowy orange. A third-party network switch connects all the central unit and the 3 PCs with software 6000, and each tailored for a specific function. One is set up here as a chairman, one is an operator, and one is running the conference display app. And then the analog output connects the central unit are used to feed the external sound reinforcement system and to provide audio for recording purposes. So we're going to go into the hardware now. This is the complete line, including the DIS CCU central control unit, the MXC IC interpreter console, the sign, the MicroFlex Complete gooseneck microphones, the connection cables, and some more important accessories for system expansion. So it is versatile in application. It provides superior sound quality, and it's scalable. So where required, the very comprehensive Software 6000 conference management software can be added to this setup to provide additional capabilities. Firmware upgrades allow you to further expand hardware functionality or adapt to different changes in the requirements. There's 4 ways to operate the system: standalone with a browser-based control, Software 6000 operation, or via a third-party media control system, or a combination of all of them. In addition, the system allows the microphones to be operated in 4 ways: manual, automatic, first in, first out, and Vox mode. So the first part of the system we're going to talk about is the MicroFlex multi-pin gooseneck microphones. They are industry-leading natural and intelligible sound for meetings that are less exhausting and more productive. The locking 10-pin connector provides secure connections for audio and the LED indicator and prevents unauthorized removal. They're available in 16-inch or 20-inch lengths to accommodate different mounting positions on tables and other furniture. They're available in dual flex versions, so with a flexible at the base and at the capsule at the top. This is more often going to be used when you have a dual delegate unit where the microphone is going to be swiveled back and forth between dual delegates. The comm shield provides the resistance against RF noise. The multicolor LED ring, which is red and green, indicates different microphone status. And then the microphones do ship with a cardioid capsule. However, they do use interchangeable Microflex capsules. So you can change to Omni, supercardioid, or the mini shotgun, which I don't have showing here, but you can see them in front of you. So the first portable unit we're going to look at is the MXC 615. It can be configured in 3 modes for chairman, delegate, or dual delegate use. Dual delegate is not available yet. It is coming with a firmware update. 2 channel selectors are available on the unit on the left and right, each with a 3.5mm headphone jack. And then you've got your optional braille overlays for visually impaired units. For visually impaired users, not units. The only difference between the 615 and the 620 is the addition of an NFC card slot for the 620. Price-wise, they're $50 difference between the 615 and the 620. The only time you're going to sell the 615 really doesn't like that NFC card, and I don't know why. We basically came out with the 615 for one customer that was ordering hundreds of them and didn't want NFC cards, and they wanted to save $50 a unit, so they did it for them. But generally, I wouldn't even talk about the 615. Just go right to the 620. So there's 3 modes available. There's chairman. The package for chairman contains 3 different buttons. So you can change the buttons on the unit. One is all delegates off, one is mute all, and the other one is next on. And you can buy a Speak A-B package, which contains an additional 10 buttons labeled Speak A and 10 buttons labeled Speak B. And then finally, the packages for mute and reply each contain 10 additional buttons. The MXC 630 portable unit adds voting capability to the MXC 620 feature set and can be configured for single use by either a chairperson or a delegate. 5 backlit voting buttons accommodate a wide range of voting or polling procedures. And then a single language channel selector with OLED display is included, but 2 3.5mm headphone jacks allow the selected language to be shared with another delegate. Again, integrated braille labels below the speak and function buttons provide positive control for visually impaired users, and participants can identify themselves to the system by inserting a programmable NFC ID card. Next in the range is the MXC 640, which is a full-featured conference unit with a touchscreen display. It can be configured again in 3 modes: chairperson, delegate, or dual delegate use. The dual delegate mode is not available yet. It's coming with a firmware upgrade. The main user interface is a 4.3-inch touchscreen display that provides status information as well as controls beyond the speak and function. The user interface provides convenient control of the 2 interpretation channel selectors and 2 3.5mm headphone jacks, which support dual delegate operation. Integrated braille labels below the speak and mute buttons, again for positive control from visually impaired users, and then the NFC ID card reader allows participant identification. So the MXC 640 touchscreen user interface allows for multiple hardware-related views and controls, such as speak and request lists, the voting procedure lists, including an attendance check, start and stop of all voting, as well as views of the vote results, interpretation channel selection, and finally unit type and button configurations within the hidden technical menu. Interchangeable speak and function buttons support different user roles and functions for the left button. Same with the units I mentioned before. You can buy different packages for these. The chairman package, again, has 3 different buttons for all delegates off, mute all, and next on. Then you've got your Speak A-B package, which is 10 buttons for Speak A and B. And then the mute and reply package, which contains 10 identical buttons. And these are all for use with the 630 as well. So with optional Software 6000, additional views and controls are available, such as participant login via code, PIN, or chip card. Your reply list, the agenda, and messages are all optional via Software 6000. So as the flush-mounted counterpart to the MXC 620, the MXC 620F is designed for single use by either a chairperson or a delegate. It includes the NFC ID card reader for participant identification and a single interpretation channel selector with one 3.5mm headphone jack. The MXC 630F is the flush-mounted variant of the MXC 630. It can also be used as chairperson or delegate and includes 5 backlit voting buttons, the single interpretation channel selector with one 3.5mm headphone jack, and the NFC ID card reader.
I'm sorry, not on the press. Are we calling that a dual or a single unit?
The last one? It is available. You can operate it in chairman or delegate right now. Dual delegate is coming. Yeah.
How does the dual delegate work with any of the NFC cards?
When it's in dual delegate mode, the NFC card you'll put it in, and when the firmware is upgraded, you're going to latch to which side you're sitting on. So on the screen, it'll come up left or right, and you'll just click which side you're on, remove the card, put the next card in, and click which side that person's sitting on. So that as they speak, they would hit their side of the screen, and it's going to show who's speaking.
Another question is on the overlays for the 630s and 640s. How does it adhere? I get it on the 5900. How does it work on these?
The Braille overlays?
Not the Braille, but you were showing some other.
The buttons you have to pop the buttons out and put the new buttons in.
Just pop out.
Yep. Good to move on?
Good.
And I actually haven't tried to pop these buttons out. I think you need a special tool, but I haven't gone down that road yet, so.
One last question about that dual delegate mode. So with the dual delegate, the idea with the firmware, of course, will be that you be able to put one card in, pretty much assign it, put the other card in, assign it.
Right.
But at that point, you have a card that's left out,
Right.
potentially. With this firmware update, will the need to keep the card into the slots of the whole series go away?
Yeah, on the dual delegate models, you will not need to keep the card in. The problem with that is you're going to have to remember to log out when you leave the station,
Got it.
right?
Okay.
So, and I think that's where the holdup is right now as to why the dual delegate hasn't been released, because they're figuring out how to make that work.
Maybe put a timer of some kind.
Yeah, yeah. Or when the meeting ends, everything is wiped. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how it's going to work. Okay, so also in the line is the MXC MIU, which is the multi-interface unit. It's a compact conference unit for applications with limited mounting space. So for example, something like this podium over here. It offers multiple operating modes for use with the flush-mounted interface plates, such as the MXC MIU FS and MXC MIU FL. These are connected to the main module via a locking HDMI connector or an external audio source, such as a wireless microphone receiver through the XLR input.
Does the XLR input provide phantom power?
No, it does not. Yeah, I don't know why, but it does not. So, MXC MIU can accommodate either one or two of the MXC MIU FS or FL flush-mounted microphone units connected to HDMI connector A and B. As of right now, it only supports one. However, again, this is going to be updated shortly. They've told me in the next month or so this is going to be updated to allow 2 units per MXC MIU. When used with an ambient microphone or external interpretation channel, the audio signal is fed into the XLR connector, which also has a ground lift switch. So please note, currently the change between either use, either the XLR or the HDMIs, as an input source can only be executed via the firmware upgrade utility. You have to tell it which way you're going to use it, either the XLR or the HDMIs. The interface plates for the MXC MRU are available in 2 versions, as I mentioned. The small plate, which is the FS, with mute function and speak buttons. And FS just means flush-mounted small. And it's got the multi-pin microphone connector and a 3.5mm headphone jack. or the large plate MXC MIU FL with mute function and speak buttons, the multi-pin microphone connector, the headphone jack, and the loudspeaker. Both plates are connected to the MXC MIU via locking HDMI cables, and a 1 meter locking HDMI cable is shipped with each plate. Keep in mind, if you do need a longer HDMI, you are going to have to buy a good HDMI cable, because there is power and data and audio running on that HDMI cable, not just signal. The MXC MIU can also be used to insert an audio source into the DCS LAN bus in single unit mode. The audio source could be a podium microphone for a presenter, a wireless microphone system for audience questions and answers, an external interpretation channel, or an ambient mic. Next up in the range is the MXC IC, which is the interpreter console. It provides a new look and feel in regards to buttons, control wheels, indicators, and displays. As with most of the MXC conference units, user identification is possible via the NFC card. Most important, the MXC IC conforms to the new ISO 20109 standard for interpreter equipment. We are the only manufacturer currently shipping a product that meets all of the ISO standards for interpreters. The two 3.5 millimeter TRRS connectors on the left and right side of the unit for connection of headsets or headphones by 2 interpreters, as well as an integrated loudspeaker on the rear of the unit that reflects sound off the glass window typically found in an interpreter's booth. That's the first question I always get asked about that interpreter's unit, is why is the speaker on the back? And it's because it's always in front of a piece of glass, always. So further, there's a 3.5 millimeter TRS port on the bottom for headphones, as well as integrated braille labels for buttons and audio cues for visually impaired users. ISO requirements also cover tone controls for bass and treble, adjustment options for display brightness and contrast, 8 relay buttons, 3 outgoing language channels, and some other minor details. While not required by the ISO specifications, the interpreter can monitor the agenda or the speaker and request lists, as well as receive system messages. So, next in the line is the MXC sign. The name sign is ideal for large conferences, panel discussions, press conferences, and so on. The high-resolution 1900 by 460 pixel e-paper display with 4-bit grayscale is a contemporary and efficient replacement for printed cardboard or wooden name signs. The MXC sign screen can display the same or different content on both sides, providing flexibility to display speaker information to the audience and messages or other information to the participant. The name sign can be placed on a table or flush mounted for permanent applications, and the screen can also display 2 names for use with dual participants, reducing cost and saving space. The MXC sign only requires power during programming, and the sign will also retain its content when power is disconnected. So keep in mind, right now the only way to program this is via a template editor in Software 6000, or a browser-based user interface on the CCU, the Central Control Unit, which allows for a name and subtext line, such as a title, etc. Down the road, there is a micro USB port on the sign that will allow for programming via USB eventually. It was working, and they shut it off because they realized that USB port was a backdoor onto the network that was unprotected. So they had to shut it down until we can figure out how to protect that network chain. So the DIS CCU is the central control unit for the MXC system.
Ben, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries.
We don't want to hot patch, unpatch, or repatch anything in the system while it's active.
Correct.
We just talked about programming the screens that you would need to have a CCU to connect it to send the information.
Right.
Is it the same as the other units? We don't want to unplug that and then plug the next one in to program it and unplug that without shutting down the system between each one?
So official best practice is to turn it off. However, when you're only pulling one sign, right? If you program the sign and it's done programming, you're not really putting any power on the line at that time, so you're okay to pull it off and reprogram the next sign.
Thank you.
Right? So the CC, anybody else have questions about the signs? We can circle back to, if anyone wants to go over it a little deeper.
Can it mount on the front of the wall like the nameplates are behind you?
No. It really only mounts flat on the bottom. We've already had a couple of customers that have built shelves for them. They do have screw holes in the bottom so you can affix them. But yeah, it isn't like a wall-mounted flush mount. There is no option for that right now.
Any plans for vertical orientation?
As of right now, no.
I actually had this question come up with some other folks, and the answer to that is actually yes. You can mount it on the wall. This is what we're talking about, right?
Yep.
Directly to the wall and have text run vertically. You will have to use Software 6000 to program it because it becomes a custom programming at that point.
Cool, it's news to me.
One last question. I noticed when we were doing the use case with the comedy show that when the names changed, the screen flickered a bit. And I noticed that you said that the rear of the display could be used for private messaging and things like that. Is that something that's able to be changed on the fly? And if so, will it cause that flicker?
No, through Software 6000, you'd be able to program like just the side that I can see, and it wouldn't affect the front. It would flash as it reprograms because it's like so it needs to be wiped before it can be reprogrammed. So that's why it flashes white before the screen comes back on. So if you were to do it through Software 6000 and just program the one side, I would see a white flash on this side, but this side would remain unchanged.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It might be worth mentioning that we're also looking at potentially allowing to write to just certain portions of the sign.
Right.
This would be future updates, but maybe just the bottom left-hand corner or something like so it refreshes faster. It'll be less of that flashing because you're only refreshing one little portion of the screen through the whole thing.
Right. Any other questions on the sign, guys? Okay. I'm really looking forward to when the signs are programmable via USB, because then I think not only does it help the MXC range, it helps the MXCW range, because now this is a viable option for the wireless system. So you can go out to a rental facility and just program a bunch of signs via your USB port on your computer, deploy them for that meeting, and then bring them back and wipe them again. So I can see that adding some real value soon, but we're getting there. So the central control unit for the MXC system, the DIS CCU provides power for all of the connected conference units. It handles all the monitoring and control signals and mixes and processes the audio of all activated microphones. As shipped, the DIS CCU is compatible with 5900 series discussion units and replaces the CU 5905, the old CCU. When it's loaded with feature license 6000 or FL 6000, the DIS CCU is compatible with either the 6000 series, the DIS 6000 series, or the MXC series conference units, and replaces the old CU 6110 and 6105. So we just have one CCU now, so there's no confusion on that. And we're going to go over the feature licenses a little bit more in the following section. So please note it's not possible to use 5900 series and 6000 series units at the same time on the same CCU. You would either need to change your feature license to 5900 or 6000 or vice versa, but you can't use them both at the same time. Okay, so we're going to learn some key features here about the DIS CCU. It's a 1RU high tabletop unit, which includes detachable 19-inch rack mounting brackets. Its compact size is achieved by the use of an external 150-watt power supply, from which 125 watts are available to power the connected conference units. Basic system setup and selection of the general microphone control mode for the CCU is possible via the front LCD navigation screen and control buttons on the front of the unit. There is an RJ45 connector on the rear of the unit, which provides access to the embedded browser-based GUI, and also allows control of the unit via command strings from a third-party control system. The DIS CCU has 4 additional DCS LAN ports. These are for connecting MXC conference units on multiple chains. For example, to group together certain types of units or units placed in specific sections of the room. The 125 watts of power available for conference units is dynamically distributed among the 4 ports depending on the load. 8 XLR analog audio outputs allow you to route individual audio signals, such as the interpreter channels or signal mixes, to external sound reinforcement systems, recording or streaming devices, and AV conferencing processors. Sorry, I keep saying processors. Should I say processors? I'm showing my Canadian, sorry. That's okay. 2 XLR analog audio input connectors are available for inserting audio signals such as wireless mics used for a presenter or audience questions, or simply audio playback during meeting breaks. And then an emergency evacuation message, an EEM contact closure, combined with input 2 overrides the system audio with the audio signal connected to input 2 when the contact closure is made. So it does have the EEM capability. By default, the CCU can control conference units for up to 250 participants. With an additional feature license, the unit can control conference units for up to 3,800 participants. 4 interpretation channels are supported by default, and then with additional feature licenses, you can have up to 31 channels of interpretation. The DIS CCU browser-based user interface for system configuration and basic. We operated in 7 different modes of microphone activation. Basic voting with cast and tally is available by default. And in addition to the feature license 6000, 4 additional feature licenses are available that enable all available features. So having talked a few times about feature licenses, let's just take a quick look at the licensing concept for hardware components and for software 6000. In general, there's 2 types of licenses in place. Both unlock additional functionality depending on the customer needs and provide flexibility and scalability in regards to investment costs. For hardware components in standalone systems, these are called feature licenses and are stored in the CCU, and these are perpetual. The counterparts for software are called Software 6000 licenses, and they're kept within the Software 6000 installation and are either temporary or perpetual, depending on your needs. Software 6000 licenses are grouped per main functionality. Sorry, I went ahead too quickly there. And are sold in pre-configured combinations. We'll go over that in just a second. So for now, we're going to focus on the feature license and how it's implemented. The feature license is a key in the format of an uploadable XML file. As such, it's a price list item which the customer gets sent via email going along with the issue of their invoice. For explanation, let's take a look at the FL6000 feature license, which unlocks the CCU for use with the MXC and DCS 6000 components. The firmware portion is already coded into the CCU, but locked by default unless ordering and uploading the respective feature license 6000 key. So the current overview of all feature licenses for the MXC system, there's 5. Feature license 6000 is required to operate MXC and or DCS 6000. FL 6000-3800 is needed to control between 251 and 3,800 participants. FL 6000 INT8 allows for up to 8 interpretation channels. The -16 is for up to 16 interpretation channels. And then the feature license INT31 is for up to 31. If you do come across the need for this, if you need 12 languages, you can't, and you've already bought the 8, you can't buy another 8. You have to buy the 16. That's just the way the feature licenses work. So here's a concrete example. What the customer will receive as the license key is a zipped file. With unzipping the file, the name consists of the following parts. There's the license type. Here's a DCS 6000 license, and serial number of the central unit for which the license was issued. As such, the feature license is hardware specific, and use with any other central unit is not supported. So you can't transfer your licenses, you have to get a new one. This is important in case a backup central unit is kept in the system. With a tool like Notepad, the license can be viewed, but please note that any edits will lead to a corruption of the file. So don't try and change any expiration dates or anything like that in the system. So as mentioned with the description of the central unit, we're going to take a relatively high look at the proprietary system called DCS LAN and the required cables and cabling best practices.
Ben?
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. If we can go back 2 slides real quick.
sure. Here?
One more, there one. So if I buy a CCU and I don't put FL6000 on it, is it just a 5900 box? So you buy it, it comes with 5900 features with no anything, and then if I want it to connect to either of the MXC or 6000 systems to do anything, I got to start with an FL6000.
Right.
Perfect. Thank you.
So basically, feature license 6000 is your key to use that CCU with MXC or 6000. Right.
Just to follow up on that, can we order a CCU with the license preloaded? Or is it always going to
No.
come as a key?
It always has to come to you as a key. Yeah. Okay. So, DCS LAN and Ethernet, we need to keep in mind they are separate, okay? They are not the same thing. Though they both use the same RJ45 connector and can use the same cable type, DCS LAN and Ethernet, they're not the same either from the pin connection or from the actual communication protocol. And this is true whether PoE is implemented or not. They are just completely different. So as you can see from these tables, power and data lines are used. A device with an Ethernet port accidentally connected to DCS LAN usually doesn't get damaged, but I have seen a laptop get fried. Someone plugged a laptop directly into the LAN port on a CCU, and I watched things happen. So,
Smoky things.
smoky, that lovely smell that you never, that smell of burning electronics? So yeah, make sure that you recognize they are different. Always use shielded RJ45 connectors since a continuous shield connection is required for proper signal transport. Consequently, never use unshielded twisted pair cable, either referred to as UUTP or previously as UTP. So the specifications for Sure's pre-configured mail network cables are EC6001-XX. They're available in 9 different lengths and range from 0.5 meter to 50 meters. The shielding type is 4-pair FUTP. Conductor gauge is 24. The RJ45 connectors are shielded and lockable. And the actual cable specifications meet the standard. It's TIA EIA 568-B. And they have a rating of 350 megahertz. The key information on the EC6001XX is that it is packed and tested individually. Each one of our cables, we know when they leave that they work and they meet our spec. So I think Chris went over this a little bit earlier this morning. If any other longer length is necessary, we only support that customers build their own with female-to-female connectors so that we can use our patch cables to come off of the integrated cables. So let's talk a little bit about cable treatment. No matter which cable, either Sure manufactured or a custom cable, there's certain guidelines to observe in terms of cable treatment. Do not over-fasten cables. This is a real photo, and they couldn't understand why they were losing signal. A pinched cable may change its electrical performance and then not operate correctly. Watch your bend radius. Don't bend the cables too sharply. The bending radius for Ethernet cables shouldn't be less than 4 times the outer diameter of the cable. Typically, Ethernet cables are around 8 millimeters thick, which means the bending radius should not be smaller than about 32 millimeters. Another often observed bad habit, and we've talked about this a couple of times today, is hot swapping DCS LAN cables, which means connecting or unplugging them while the CCU is powered on. Always power off the CCU before recabling, especially the closer you get to the CCU. There's full current, and the highest voltage possible is right at the unit, so be careful doing that. When unplugging in this condition, it can create small electrical spikes from the 4 power line conductors of the RJ45 connector, and that can result in micro damage of the pin surface, so it's electrical corrosion, which may lead to inconsistent communication errors. So let's talk about alternative new cable topology. Historically, with the DCS 6000 components, the DCS LAN cable chain, we told you could not loop it. It must not be closed to a loop. This incorporates the risk that a cable failure may impact the communication to and from the units beyond the point of failure. With the new DCS LAN topology in MXC, it's already incredibly robust and reliable, and MXC takes it to a new level of stability by allowing the system to close the chain or create a redundant loop. In the case of a cable failure, the CCU keeps the communication to and from the units beyond the point of failure by reversing the direction of the communication from the second port. Consequently, the system can handle one cable failure along the line. Please note that direct connection between the CCU ports is only possible with firmware version 8.4.0 and higher. And also note, in order for this feature to work, the gender changer for some of the cable pins has to be inserted into the DCS LAN line. The McRib redundancy interface box is also available from us here at Shure.
And there's no swapping or crossing over inside the McRib. It's just a coupler.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So now that in the past, the DIS units didn't refresh the signal. Now MXC units refreshes the LAN signal in every unit. So there is a DCS LAN in and DCS LAN out port on all of the units here, and the correct direction of cabling for a system needs to be observed. Should the in and out ports be reversed, LEDs of the respective units beyond that error, so you know where the error was made. Also, in case of a cable failure, there's a clear localization now of the failure point. Mixed topology, example MXC and DCS 6000 units in the same chain, is generally possible, but functionality would be limited to the standard DCS LAN. So cable loop redundancy works only with a closed loop of MXC units. It doesn't extend to the older DCS 6000. So if you're going to combine MXC and DCS 6000, we would recommend using different ports on the CCU to create separate chains for MXC and DCS 6000. So you'd run your MXC on port 1 and you'd run your DCS 6000 on port 2 if you were going to do it that way. Having in common the DCS LAN is the connection for power, communication, and audio. Multiple historic DCS 6000 accessories can be used together with the MXC conference units. They can be grouped into DCS LAN power and signal accessories, audio accessories, and microphones and headphones. So we're going to take a look at a few of them here. The first group covers the DCS LAN power and signal accessories. Here we have the PI 6000 DCS LAN power kit, the PI 6000 power inserter, and the RC 6000 redundancy controller, the 6104 junction box, the RP 6004 repeater, and the EX 6010 extension unit, and then the SZ, just because I like to bug you guys, the SZ6104 DCS LAN switcher. We're going to take a quick look at all of these, and I'm going to go through them quickly because it is kind of boring, but you need to know they exist.
They're all about to be discontinued, right?
No. No, these are all, because they're part of the MXC range now, to provide the functionality and scalability of the MXC range, this stuff is going to have to stay. They just didn't rebrand it all as MXC, just so that there wasn't confusion as to, it's the same part, there was no point in changing the name. So the PI 6000, the reason it's -XX, for you guys it's always going to be US. The only differentiator there would be -UK would be for a different plug. It's a power inserter used to provide additional power capacity for up to 40 conference or interpreter units, or up to 80 channel selectors in one DCS LAN chain. It's primarily designed for standalone use, but the PI 6000 inserter box can also be built into a 19-inch rack mount front plate. The power supply is identical to the DIS CCU, and the DC voltage connection to the power supply is lockable as well. The PI 6000 DCS LAN power kit consists of a PS CCU power supply and a PI 6000 power inserter. As the name indicates, this is the same power supply used to operate the CCU, and as such, a few variants of the kit are available depending on the included AC power cable, US, UK, etc. The redundancy controller is used in combination with two PS CCU power supplies when a seamless and redundant provision of power is required. Both DC voltage connection from the feeding power supplies as well as one to the central unit are lockable. The unit has no fan built in, and as such is quiet enough to be placed within the actual conference room. And then a red LED indicates the fail of the respective CCU unit. Here's an example of the RC6000 redundancy controller. Two PS CCU power supplies are connected to an RC6000 redundancy controller, then connected to a DIS CCU. If one power supply were to fail, the other power supply would keep the system functioning seamlessly. This is for when you have one of those high-profile conference systems that just cannot fail. The JB6104 junction box passively splits the DCS LAN line to gain 4 independent tap-out connections for conference units. It's used for flexibility in multi-purpose rooms where units are supposed to be set up and stored quickly without having to change the floor cabling. One requirement or limit is that only one participant unit or a maximum of 4 channel selectors can be connected per output. And the other limit is the maximum allowed cable length of 10 meters per tab out port.
So in that situation, you wouldn't daisy chain,
Correct.
home runs?
Right. The RP6004 repeater provides repeater and splitter functionality for the DCS LAN signal on MXC and DCS 6000 systems. However, it doesn't add any additional power. Inserted in a DCS LAN chain, the unit regenerates the incoming signal both in terms of strength or level and quality of the waveform. It on the 4 individual outputs as well as the loop-through connectors. It extends the maximum cable length between the CCU and the last conference unit from 200 meters without the repeater to 680 meters. The release of the DCS LAN power to the 4 split chains is delayed, so it minimizes the total switch-on current of the main power line. In larger systems, there's 2 ways to chain together multiple repeaters. In this drawing, the CCU is connected to the first